Hi, I'm Rosie. This is Lime Yoga, as I think most of you already know. Today's video is pretty much out of some of my own personal experiences recently, and it's also out of some of the experiences of the people I've been working with. So I thought it'd be really nice to put together something about how you can actually be in life or be with life when life feels incredibly difficult, and that you are going through things that you would wish you didn't have to go through, or that you're finding really difficult in some way or unable to change perhaps. In particular, I guess this would relate if you're feeling a little bit out of control as well. There might be some kind of event that is very difficult for you to cope with too. So I'm going to amalgamate my experience of counselling, obviously, alongside this, and counselling and the yoga, and actually healing as well, of course, and various other things that I do. So I'm just going to put it all in and see what happens. So the first thing I wanted to say is that the trick, if you like, with this is to try not to run away from it. And that might be exactly the opposite of what anyone wants to do in a situation like this, because of course when you're feeling all of these feelings and they're incredibly overwhelming, what we want to do is run away to perhaps distractions, to perhaps in the mind space, perhaps we run into work, perhaps we run to drink perhaps, or to eating, or to any of whatever our coping mechanisms are when we're finding something really difficult. And you're probably already doing that, and I think it's perfectly fair to kind of notice when we've done that, without being hard on ourselves in any way. This is the bit kind of, we know we've been struggling and we know we're finding something too difficult to handle and we don't know how to change it. And obviously the COVID situation will be part of exacerbating any of the issues that all of us are going through at the moment. And it has been around for some time as well, hasn't it? So that's all part of, if you like, the backdrop, I think, of this feeling out of control. Or having said all of that, once we notice that these overwhelming feelings are here and that we've been running away, this is when, and that we're using coping strategies to try to deal with them rather than sort of being with them. This is where we kind of need to go, okay, something's going on for me here, and it's time maybe to pull myself back to the present moment. So there are lots of ways we can do this, but first is just coming away from that resistance, actually just giving ourselves, if you like, the intention to be and to feel. And this is what most of us don't want to do when things are hard. We don't want to feel. We don't want to kind of experience the emotions inside our body. We don't want to go to that space because it feels disempowering, but actually being with your feelings is empowering, as long as we don't as long as we trust that they're not going to completely overwhelm us. And that's part of why we kind of pull away from them a lot. So there's some techniques to kind of being with our feelings here. The first I would say is you want to create, if you like, a bit of a kind space for yourself. So when you're wanting to be with your feelings, we need to make sure that we're not going to be perhaps interrupted by people that are going to be, I don't know, making things about them, actually, to be blunt. So we want to kind of create a space for ourselves where we can actually be with ourselves, because if you go into your feelings and then you find that you're going to be distracted or be brought to someone else's stuff, that can be actually quite detrimental, because it can reinforce this idea that it's not safe to go to our feelings. So create the safe space first of all. Then once you're there, know that out of this safe space, we want, if you like, afterwards to experience a kind of a nurture day, is what I would call it. And this is suitable for men, by the way, as well as women. And by nurture, I just mean doing whatever that day feels good for you. That's going to be different for everyone. So some people will want to be outside and just be grounded in nature, and some people are going to want to binge watch on TV, have a bath. Some people are going to want to have, I don't know, some kind of music or something, or some space for themselves. And some people will want to be perhaps surrounded by family or their children, because that is a safer kind of nurturing space. So personally, I would look towards creating a nurturing space for yourself that doesn't have lots of people involved in it, but that's not always possible. So you're looking to, before you come to this space that you've created for quiet for yourself, giving yourself maybe, I don't know, maybe half an hour, maybe longer, less if you don't have more, but after that time, you know that you're going to need to do things that feel good for yourself. So those are the kind of the start point and the finish point. So we start with space, and then we finish with a space that we can kind of create, that we can enjoy something. And that can be, you know, it can be a good film and a glass of wine. It's absolutely fine, because once you've actually gone to your feelings, you're not running away from them anymore. So if you are using alcohol to run away, then the alcohol is not part of that running away anymore. It's actually part of a nurture and enjoyment focus, which is a much nicer way to engage with something like that, or other things that you might want to do. When you're there, there are lots of different tools. I would probably just go to just sit in for a little while, somewhere comfortable, somewhere that feels a nice space to be in, and actually just ask yourself the internal question, how am I? Kind of ask it inwardly. How am I feeling? And just wait for the response, because there will be responses. There will probably be quite a few of them, perhaps. So you're waiting for that response, and sometimes the part of you that answers is not really actually in this present time. They're kind of helping your experiences. So they're really part of your everyday experiences. But often, what answers in that space is a younger experience that you've had, a younger self, if you like, within the inner child. You can call it. You can call it whatever you want, but. So let's say you're feeling that life is incredibly difficult for you, and there's stuff that's going on, and you ask yourself, you stop and you say, how am I feeling? And part of you answers with, I don't think I'm ever going to be happy. So, or life never goes right for me, or, you know, nobody loves me. This stuff can be really quite deep. So what you've got immediately then is an awareness that what's going on for you is not just around the situations that you're experiencing in current life right here, right now. You've got a deeper layer of emotional feeling that's going on below you. And that really is what you're probably struggling with more. Now, that's not to say that your life circumstances right now aren't difficult, and that there aren't things that you could do with changing or wanting to be different in some way. But what it does mean is that actually, in reality, we're often being driven by older stuff that we don't realise we're holding, we're quite unconscious of. But when we do slow down and ask ourselves how we're feeling, then we can get answers about what that is. Now, you don't necessarily need to do anything with this, and that's the really important point. You can just listen. And what is very important, though, not to do is not to criticise that response. Don't go to the space of attacking that response within you. You may automatically find that this voice kind of comes back in that has a go at you for reacting this way. This is also a very common experience that a lot of us have. We ask ourselves how we are. The part of us that responds says, I'm not actually okay. I'm not really feeling okay at all. And this other part of us then comes in and goes, well, you should pull yourself together then, because blah, 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 and so copes, and whatever it is, this, you know, and you're always like this. And that is a non-nurturing voice. That's a critical parent, or critical voice, whatever you want to call it. This we want to kind of accept, in the sense of this voice, bizarrely, is actually trying to help us. That part of us that criticises us, it comes out of a fear space that we can't protect ourselves. So if you do get that voice engaged, what I want you to then say to that part of you is, I hear you, thank you for worrying about me, but right now I'm just going to be listening to me and listening to how I feel. So you don't need to do anything here, basically. You don't need to be involved in this conversation, because I'm trying to look after myself right now. So here, And some people find this a little bit uncomfortable, but this is some of the work that I do with the yoga therapy and the talking yoga therapy, basically. And where we're working on lots of different levels. We've got the adult here in life that can't cope because they're struggling, because life can be quite hard at times, or whatever version of that there is going on for you. And then inside we ask ourselves how we are. Now there's going to be personal right now responses, anger, perhaps irritation, upset, that are going to be connected to now, but around that somewhere there's a drop down. There's a space down there where we drop into the child voice and our younger experiences, which are actually much more powerful and hold us back significantly more. And they're not always young. Sometimes they can be past experiences that have been particularly traumatic as well. So we listen. Okay, that doesn't mean we need to become flooded by them or overwhelmed by them, but we just kind of welcome them and we say, I hear you. You know, I'm listening, and I'm trying to make some changes to support us better, and to support myself better, and to come into alignment with what is more balanced for me in my life at this time. So just being listened to, that part of you is going to calm. And your fear probably is that it's not going to calm, that it's going to overwhelm you, but that is usually not the case at all. And I'm seriously mean, it's really rarely the case. There's a feeling, there's a fear of overwhelm. It's like, because this part of us hasn't really ever been listened to, it always gets shoved to the side. So when you actually open the doors and hear what you're feeling and what's struggling, and maybe what's been struggling for a long time, that can be scary. And that's why that critical voice can also come in to protect. But actually, in reality, listening isn't going to overwhelm you. You can always, if you're someone who struggles with stuff, you can have like or maybe if you're more artistic as well, you can have a notebook alongside. You can write down a couple of words. You can, and then that engages the logical brain and pulls you out of stuff quite neatly if you are feeling overwhelmed. But you could also draw stuff. You could also kind of scribble stuff out, or you can engage in whatever way you need to with that. But you could just sit there and listen and say, I hear you. And it's never our fault that we've had to suppress these parts of us. That's what life does. And in order to cope, we all have to suppress parts of ourselves to get by when we're struggling. However, it doesn't mean we shouldn't listen to them eventually. So give them a little bit of space. And there are always people out there who can help, if necessary, myself included, in helping you learn how to listen to these parts of you, and helping you to deal with them when they do feel that they're going to overwhelm you. But like I say, in this moment in time, usually they don't. Usually they're thankful to be heard. You may cry, you may be angry, and every emotion that you have, I would invite you to welcome it and actually acknowledge it, hear it, feel it, because it's here for a reason. And our life gets stuck when we suppress our emotions. Our flow gets stuck when we suppress our emotions. Our ability to move forward with stuff and to be connected as people emotionally to other people, not just to be connected to the kind of practical things of life and to getting things done, but actually to be emotionally connected. It's all in this space where we actually acknowledge ourself on a deeper level and our own needs. So the other thing I wanted to say out of this is, once you've done that, ask this part of you, what do they need? Maybe there's something they need, and that's really important. Maybe you can help, maybe you can't help, maybe it's a process that you can settle into after a while to be able to help. But you could write that down, because that's important. When you get this dialogue going with these parts of yourself that are struggling more deeply, which are going to be hugely influential in your ability to cope with the daily reality of life, then we want to ask ourselves, what do we need? What can make me feel better in this space? What can be more helpful for me? And again, you will welcome the critical voice. You may find if you welcome your critical voice, it will calm down and tell you actually it's just scared. It's just trying to help. It's having a go at you because it wants you to sort yourself out, to listen, to be safe, and So in a way, that part of us that we don't like at all is also trying to help us survive. The mind and the emotions are incredibly complex, but they're also quite beautifully set to protect us a lot of the time. Even when we're struggling, there's this kind of natural inner protection if we just kind of open to that in ourselves. So I'm not going to take much longer. I'm just going to say that remember, after this, once you've opened that space, you might want to write things down, you might want to listen, you do want to ask what you need, you do want to let the emotions out. Then once we've done that, we come back out, say thank you to yourself, to all parts of yourself, that being able to have that dialogue, because it's pretty powerful. And anyone who kind of wants to, if you like, create a really good space for themselves in life, or even achieve things, usually has this more deeper inner dialogue with themselves, because that is how we can create sustainable change, and that's quite important. Without that inner dialogue, a lot of stuff that we're doing is just going to kind of fall away, because we're not really rooted into what's going on internally for ourselves. So it also is a very grounding technique. So after this, what do you want to do? You want to go to your nurture space. So you might have bright red eyes and you might not want to be outside, but maybe you want to roll a duvet over yourself and put a film on. Or maybe, I don't know, what else could you do? You can always come to your breath. Your breath will always calm you, so important. The Samaritans use on their page, they use the square breathing technique as a way of controlling, and that is really quite a beautiful way of kind of coming back into a sense of presence and being able to cope with what we're going on with emotionally. So it's basically just inhaling to the count of roughly 4, pausing to the count of roughly 4, exhaling to 4, and then pausing, and just going around this kind of square of breath. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause, inhale, pause, exhale, pause. So breath will take you out of that. Getting outside in nature will take you out of into a nurturing space as well. And also, most of us have some kind of support system available for us. Often we find we can't reach out, but when we do reach out, sometimes some really beautiful things happen. So maybe reach out to someone. Maybe not the person you're having problems with potentially, but reach out to someone who you know is a little bit more there for you, or might be able to hear you. And if not, reach out for someone like me, or a counsellor, or whatever. Or, go back into the breath again. So just wanted to share this because I know I'm hearing from a lot of people, and I'm also experiencing myself, that life is very difficult at the moment, and a lot of stuff is coming up for a lot of people. Now the beauty of this is a period of shifting and of change and of moving forward, and that is never easy, but it is also quite beautiful too. So let's try and hold the hope around that as well. So thank you for listening, and I hope this was helpful. And as I said, feel free to contact me if you want to do this in person, and to know a little bit more, or maybe just have any questions. Okay, namaste.